Hello, hello. Let's see here. Trying to. There we go. There we are. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm trying a background this time because I feel like this is the easiest way for me to go about like telling everyone what we're reading. So no one has to. Thank you. Thank you for my hat. Thank you. Welcome everyone for another reading. God, my hair is doing all sorts of weird stuff right now. Can you guys hear me? Does everything sound okay? Let me see here. No, I think that should be okay. Thank you, Ishmael. I appreciate you. All right. Well, for anyone who's new, welcome. You have stumbled upon a book reading for this evening, and as you can tell, this is what we are reading. And I think you can also see the author's name up there on the top of the screen, I think. So we've already gone through one set, a few chapters. We've gone through the first 4 chapters so far. So we are picking back up on chapter 5. If you happen to have this book, feel free to follow along, like to read along. And we'll be starting on page 45 this evening. And we're going to read for about an hour just to kind of see how I'm feeling. So we'll probably get to, I don't know, page 80, 85. Where will that take us? That'll get us maybe to chapter 9. We'll see. We'll see. How was everyone's weekend? Hopefully everyone's weather situation has been fairly under control. No crazy storm bursts or anything like that. We had a wild rain front come through here earlier today. It was crazy. What's up, Crazy Stitches? Hello, hello, everyone. So we're going to get started reading at about 3 more minutes. We'll give it till about 5 after. Rain, yeah. Yeah, I think we actually even had a tornado warning over here where we're at. Just because the front just moved in so fast. Like, it was pouring down rain. Pouring down rain. So, it was nuts. Have any of you guys read this series before? The Kishara? Because I read this in high school. Like, I found this book series in high school. So it's been a minute. It's been a minute. In fact, let's see here. When was this? 2003. 2003. Oh my gosh. Printed in 2004. No, 2003. That's crazy. Happy Monday! Hi, Miss Rachel. How are you? Thank you for joining our live this evening. All right, I hope everyone's got their their drink of choice and got their comfy jammies on, and they're ready to settle in and get started with our reading. So, without further ado, I know it's 8:04, but whatever. Without further ado, let's jump in. Chapter 5. A chill down my spine and a flicker of darkness in the corner of my vision announced his presence, even before the figure emerged from the shadows. Still wearing black snakeskin pants and a black shirt that I now recognized as silk, the cobra terrified me just by being in the room. Pure primal instinct forced me to my feet. The back of my neck tingled, gold eyes dilated to catch every hint of light, and every inch of skin was suddenly hypersensitive. My heartbeat had jumped instantly, until I could hear it as near a buzz in the back of my ears. "What do you want?" I asked, choking back a cry from my guards. Zane Cobriana would not be stupid enough to kill me in the Mistari lands. Would he? I could not read his expression as he collapsed gracefully onto one of the large pillows that lined the room. "I decided that you and I should talk," he stated simply, his voice no louder than my own. "Sit down, Danica. I'm not going to ravage or bite you or whatever it is you're thinking." I forced myself to sit, my legs folded under me in the fine linen slacks I had yet to replace with nightclothes. My heartbeat had slowed slightly, but I could still feel the pulse in my temple and at my wrists. Talk? "We were thrown out of the Mistari Hall quite abruptly," he explained, "and in all likelihood the same will happen tomorrow unless we have some discussion prior." "Continue," I said slowly, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. "Did you know there are 4 guards outside your door, Danica?" Zane inquired. My expression must have appeared surprised, because he continued, "I thought not. The Mistari added their own people to yours. They're all incompetent, really, or I wouldn't be here. But it would have been tricky to catch you alone tomorrow, and since you're the only one in your group who has demonstrated any sense, you seem the one to talk to." "It's late, Zane, and I'm very tired," I sighed, my unease and fatigue joining to make me impatient. "What is it you want to talk about?" "About life," Zane replied lightly. Before I could speak, he went on. "And about death. About the fact that my people mean more to me than anything else, and I would do almost anything to end this foolish war. I want to talk about the world, and most specifically, about you." It took me 2 tries to ask, "Me?" Zane sighed heavily. "Of course, you. If the Mistari Disa's proposal is even to be considered, I would like to know what I would be getting myself into." "I believe you already expressed your opinion on that subject," I said dryly, falling back onto the cool, distant tone of a monarch. I tried not to be a frosty queen to my people and my friends, but when nothing else worked, I knew enough to use that composure as a shell. "And I believe my first reaction is probably still correct," Zane agreed, as if he had accepted a compliment. "It is an absurd idea, but that is no doubt why it has never been tried. I'm not saying I'll go along with it," he said hastily before continuing, "but it does have some potential." There were no words to express my emotions in that moment, though I'm sure they bordered between pure terror and helpless fascination. The Disa's suggestion was impossible. It would never happen. But still. "And what exactly do you think you're getting yourself into?" I inquired distastefully. Before this conversation went any further, I thought it best to have some idea of where Zane intended to go, since he had surely come here with some hidden purpose. Again, his gaze flickered down my form. "If it was just for your body, Danica, I would agree very quickly," he stated calmly. And despite my fine upbringing, I was not ignorant enough to keep a blush from my face. He continued, sounding slightly resigned, "But one doesn't choose a life's partner for form. And the simple fact is that your mind comes as part of the deal, and that is a part of you that, despite years of musing over it, I have yet to fathom." "Years?" I did not care for the sound of his phrasing. "I thought I understood you, once," he continued, "beautiful and arrogant and blind to suffering. And I had almost learned to hate you. But then I heard that the pristine Danica Charday had knelt in the blood and filth of the battlefield and held my brother's hand and sung to him so he would not die alone. It made me think that perhaps you might have a heart after all. I jumped when he reached toward me, belatedly recognizing the movement as something casual, a mere gesture while he spoke. His hand froze as if he had not even realized that he had moved it until I reacted, and then it balled into a fist. Zane was on his feet instantly. "Damn it, Danica," he hissed, his voice soft but full of impatience. "I'm not going to hurt you." I stood as soon as I felt Zane's temper, stepping back from the serpent. Fear made my voice venomous as I responded. "Forgive me if I find it difficult to completely trust the man who has had so many of my kind killed." "If I wanted to hurt you, I would have done it already," Zane replied bluntly. "I didn't have the slightest bit of difficulty slipping past your guards. Your avian heart beats almost 100 times a minute at rest. Poison from a cobra's bite would reach your brain within seconds, so quickly you would never have a chance to cry out." His red eyes flashed with challenge, daring me to contradict him. "Trust me, little avian, when I say that if I wanted you dead, you would have been dead long ago. I wouldn't have bothered to set up this whole meeting with the Mistari. I would have broken into your room in the dark of night and smothered you with that Chinese silk pillow that you keep on the top of the trunk at the foot of your bed." "What?" My voice was very faint, with shock this time instead of fear. I knew that he was only pretending to misunderstand when he said, elaborating, "You know, the one I mean. Gold and red silk with flying black and silver dragons. Beautiful, obviously handcrafted." "Who told you about it?" I demanded, my fear gelling with anger to form a well-practiced surface of calm. Zane raised an eyebrow as he collapsed back onto the cushion on the floor. "About the silk pillow? Or about the oaken chest it sits on?" He paused, raising his red gaze to meet mine, and I held it without wavering. "Or maybe about the white woolen blanket you sleep with in colder weather, which is as soft as new down, and the heavy tapestry that hangs across the open balcony doors in good weather." My voice was lodged in my throat. "I've been there," he answered simply. "I've seen it. The Hawk's Keep isn't the easiest place in the world to sneak into, but I have a talent for such things. I nearly got myself caught the first time, trying to figure out how to get to the first floor, but luckily avian guards don't often look up for an enemy. From there are servant staircases. You don't even keep your door locked, Danica." "I will now." Finally, he lowered his gaze, and I let out the breath that I had been holding. "You're making this up. It wasn't possible he could have gotten by my royal flight, and no matter what time of the night, someone would have seen him in the halls." "You really think so?" Zane sounded amused. "The first time I saw you, Danica, I was 16. I had just lost the first of my brothers in an avian attack. Someone, I don't remember who, told me you had just turned 15. For your birthday, my brother died." Despite the words, his voice remained calm, tired. "I rode a horse to the old Desmodus paths, and then cut through the woods. It was an hour or so after midnight when I found myself at your bedside. I meant to kill you." "And why didn't you?" "Sit down, Danica," Zane requested in almost a sigh. "Do you have even the faintest idea how beautiful you are?" When I did not respond, he closed his eyes as if picturing a long-ago memory. "You were 15, only a year younger than I was. You were wearing white lambskin pants and a blouse made of fur-lined cotton. I assumed you had fallen asleep before preparing for bed." He shook his head, opening his eyes. "I remember thinking you were as striking as the chaste Greek goddess of the hunt. I was young, and I wasn't a killer. Not then, anyway. I had never killed before, and I couldn't start by destroying something so exquisite. I reached out to touch your cheek. I was trapped in his story, trapped in the cool voice and hypnotic eyes." As Zane spoke, he reached out, brushing fingertips over the soft skin of my cheek. His hands were cool, but not cold, the touch as light as a snowflake's kiss. Even the contact of skin on skin, so unusual among my own kind, could not pull me from the spell. "You cried out in your sleep and pulled away from me, and then I saw the cut on your cheek, right here. Your arm had another slice, like you had been in a fight." As he spoke, he traced the phantom injuries which had long since healed. I suddenly knew exactly the time he was speaking about, remembering as if it had been yesterday. It was the day Vasily was killed. Only quick action from the rest of the royal flight and the defensive tactics Ray had taught me had saved my own life. Zane's voice pulled me from my thoughts. For a moment, I wanted more than anything just to take you into my arms, but you had pulled away from me once already, and I was afraid of frightening you. I told myself I hated you. His voice remained gentle despite the words, as he trailed fingers through my hair. But it wasn't true. You weren't responsible for the fighting. You weren't able to stop it any more than I was. Why are you telling me this? My voice seemed very far away. Zane spilled onto his knees, which brought him abruptly closer to me. My breath hitched sharply with surprise, but the way I was sitting kept me from jumping away. You didn't start this war, Danica, and neither did I, Zane stated. It's been going on for so long, it's meaningless. People fight because they don't know what else to do. People fight because their leaders fight. And then their leaders are killed, so they have more reason to go on. His hands touched mine as if he could not help but reach out. Danica, my sister Irene is carrying a child. She was white with fear when she told me. It's an event that should bring joy. But everyone in my family just remembers an avian soldier plunging his knife into my oldest sister's swollen belly. I started to speak, but he put a finger against my lips. No apology is necessary from you, Danica. Again, the gentle caress of hands running through my hair as he explained, I am going back to the royal hall tomorrow evening. My mother, sister, and guards will not be there to argue with the Disa and me. I hope you'll be there, and that you'll listen to what she has to say. What she suggests, it might work. I'm just asking you to give the idea a chance. Giving that particular idea a chance sounded akin to giving suicide a chance, and I knew Zane saw my hesitation. Please, Danica, he said, you sang to my brother of peace and hope. I can't believe that you aren't as desperate for those things as I am. Just try. Somehow I found myself nodding. I will try, I answered finally, struggling not to think of how Zane knew the details of those long hours on the battlefield. He ignored my uncertainty. Thank you. He stepped forward so suddenly, his lips a brief, gossamer touch on my cheek, that I let out an unintended cry. That shout, louder than our hushed voices, brought two of the royal flight instantly into the room. Zane tensed, backing away from me as well as from my guards, and I could see his garnet eyes flashing as they looked for a way out. Insanely, I stepped between Zane and the royal flight, though Ray moved forward as if to stop me. There's no trouble here, I assured him, my gaze cool with the warning not to challenge me on this point. I was just about to escort Zane out anyway. I felt Zane's tension lessen, but even so, the feel of him behind me made the feathers on the back of my neck rise. Zane, I prompted, praying silently that he would not cause trouble now. Thank you for speaking with me at such a late hour, Danica, Zane answered smoothly, his voice as polished as my own, betraying none of the emotion of moments ago. However, his movements were cool and languid, almost lazy, dangerous. Everyone who had seen a serpent fight, knew that they could strike as quickly as the snakes that were their second forms. They appeared so graceful and slow that you felt like you should have an eternity to move, but you never did. He was prepared to fight, despite any noble words he might have said to his sister before she came to the Hawk's Keep. If the royal flight attacked him, he would fight back. The posture almost made me refuse when he offered his arm, but his eyes still held a glimmer of hope, begging me to help him keep this from becoming a battle, so I swallowed my fear and forced myself to accept. The guard on my side stepped back to allow us to pass, but Zane had to shoulder past Ray on his way out. The crow directed at Zane a look that would have wilted most enemies in their tracks. Instead, Zane caught Ray's glare, wrapped an arm around my waist, and kissed me again. I was too shocked at first to respond. In the time it took me to blink and Ray to stride forward with murder in his eyes, Zane had already stepped back, his gaze turning from Ray to me as he nodded a polite good evening, changed shape, and disappeared. Ray scanned the area around us as he demanded of me, "Are you all right?" Julie, what's up? He simply wanted to talk about tomorrow's discussion with the Disa. And honestly, he was perfectly polite. He was perfectly polite until you provoked him. Oh, he was perfectly polite. Ray looked skeptical, and the coolness in his tone as he asked, "Really?" reminded me that what he had seen had almost certainly not been perfectly polite. He was perfectly polite until you provoked him, I amended, voice hard. I see, Ray said, and this time the unspoken question in his words came through to me and my cheeks colored. I turned on my heel to return to my room. Childhood friend or no, I did not need to justify myself to my guard, and on this subject I would not do so. As I walked into my room, I heard Ray say, "Inform the Thule Thea." "Charday," he called, following me in. "Danica, wait, please." I just did one of the stupidest things I have ever done. I intentionally got into a glaring match with a serpient. And during those moments, he could have killed you. Do you understand? You might have seen a show of serpient bravado from a fellow monarch trying to unnerve your guards. I saw him grabbing you, cobra fangs practically brushing against your skin, as I stood there unable to move. I sighed, exhausted from the events of the day, frightened by how they were progressing and not willing to fight. "Ray," I hugged him gently, a gesture too familiar for any avian setting, which made Ray tense for a moment before he hugged me back. It was nice to be in his arms and to abandon for a moment the reserve I was always expected to maintain. "Thank you for watching out for me." "Danica, I'm sorry I scared you," I continued, before Ray could finish whatever he was about to say. "But this time you needn't worry about what happened. No threats passed between us, just talk. Two of us trying to figure out how to end this stupid war." Ray nodded. "Danica, He broke off, stepping away from me and falling back into the formal warrior's posture as my mother entered, golden eyes cold as ice. "Charday, explain," she said shortly. I resisted the desire to sigh in annoyance. "Mother, may we discuss this tomorrow? I would like some sleep before I need to speak to the Mistari Disa again." "I would like to know what Zane Cobriana was doing in your private chambers," the Thule Thea responded. "He came to talk," I answered, trying not to sound petulant when I was so exhausted that I was probably swaying on my feet. "He was worried that if we did not communicate first, the meeting with the Mistari Disa would go the same way tomorrow as it did tonight." And well he should be. It was an atrocious suggestion then, and it will still be tomorrow. "Are you so certain it can't work?" My mother's eyes widened, and she lapsed into the informal in her shock. "Danica, you can't seriously be considering—" She trailed off. "It's impossible, and I won't allow it." "I will be Thule Thea of my own right in a few weeks," I responded. "You don't need to allow me anything." "For the moment I do," she argued. With a glance at my guard, she ordered, "Andreos, get your flight together and send the Mistari Disa our apologies. We will be leaving tonight." "Mother!" "Charday, there will be no discussion on this point," she said sharply. "We are bringing you home. If I need to have the royal flight hold you by your pin feathers the entire way." "What about the serpent?" I protested. "We should at least—" "Charday, obey me." To that final tone there was to be no argument. My head lowered so she would not see the fury on my face, and I forced out the words, "Yes, Mother." Chapter 6. Though I was infuriated by their refusal to listen to anything, I understood the response my mother and guards had given to the Mistari's proposal. In avian society, a young woman was often promised to her future Alistair shortly after birth. The two grew up together. He raised to be a guide and protector, and she raised to trust him implicitly. He was expected to walk the fine line of an avian gentleman, respecting her strength and sheltering her from the harshest of her world at the same time. Vasily had been the son of two of the ravens. By virtue of his position as my Alistair, I was closer to him than any of my family or friends. Trying not to think of what I could not change, for the next fortnight I threw myself into preparing for the position I would soon officially assume as Thule Thea. Those duties took up most of my hours, and when they lessened, I trained with the royal flight. My mother had never approved of my being taught to fight, but neither had she approved of my walking in the fields where the skills were necessary. Ray had long ago insisted that I learn some fighting skills, and now that I was restricted to the keep, I used those lessons as an excuse to work off excess energy. Naturally, I could never best his people, but my skills were extensive enough to startle many members of the royal flight. Half a month after our retreat from the Mistari, I was approached by a young girl no more than 16. She was slender and well-built, and the fire in her eyes told me the question she was going to ask before she asked it. "Charday," she greeted me, with the half-curtsy that was appropriate here. I nodded in acknowledgement. "My name is Erica Silvermead. I spoke to the Tule Thea earlier today, and she referred me to you. If there is a place available, milady, I wish permission to join the royal flight." I gazed at the girl in resignation, not surprise. She was young, but no younger than so many of our warriors when they began. No younger than so many of our warriors when they died. "Do you have any training?" I asked. "Some, milady," the girl responded. As we spoke, I sized her up. Whatever training she had had was not formal, or she would have been standing at a soldier's ready, left hand gripping right wrist. My brother taught me what he could. The unspoken words, "before he died," hung at the end of that sentence. "Follow me, and you may present yourself to the royal flight for consideration," I said, though I suspected this girl was of a lower class than the royal flight usually accepted. Erica was a sparrow, a breed almost never admitted to the royal flight, since both their human and avian forms had a tendency to be light and unsuited for fighting. However, Andreas would make the final decision based on her abilities. If he thought her an ill fit for his elite group, there might still be room for her among one of the other flights. Changing into my hawk form, I led the way down through the open circle in the floor and to the ground level, where the royal flight was currently sparring without weapons, a form of fighting that was an avian soldier's worst nightmare. My kind had the advantage of flight. If we were lucky, a battle could be finished with a volley of arrows shot from above. However, a clipped wing or lost bow could bring a soldier to the ground, where he would instantly be surrounded by an enemy who had every advantage. Ray noticed my entrance and approached. I saw him take in the girl at my side. "Are you looking for me, Charday?" he asked. "If there is a space to train her, Erica Silvermead would like consideration to join the royal flight." Ray's brows tensed slightly, as if he was trying not to frown. "Silvermead. I believe I met your brother once, Lady Erica." She nodded, keeping her head down a moment to compose herself. "You saved his life nearly 5 years ago. He spoke of it often. I'm surprised you remember." "He is quite a soldier, if I recall," Ray mused. "He was," Erica amended softly. "Ah," Ray nodded, bringing the conversation back into safe, neutral territory. Come this way, and we'll see what kind of fighter you are, Silvermead." He tossed her a blunted practice blade that, while not sharp enough to cut flesh, could cause plenty of bruises. I had earned enough of those myself during Ray's training sessions. Erica's eyes lit up, and she barely managed to avoid grinning. "Try not to look so gleeful," Ray chastised lightly. "Remember your goal, Erica, to protect your Tule Thea and her heirs, at the cost of your own life if necessary. You are a warrior. That means you will go onto a field some day soon, and you will kill another person." Erica's gaze fell, but I could tell she was not overly daunted by the prospect of murder. Politely she responded, "I apologize, sir, but one can hardly call Serpient people." Ray nodded, not arguing. Erica was not unusual. This was a frame of mind most avians, children and adults, held strongly. However, Ray did ask, "If I bring you into a fight, can I trust you to retreat if I ordered?" Erica tried very hard to hide her annoyance at the idea, but did not succeed. "I cannot allow you in my flight if you will not leave a fight when told to do so." "Does this flight frequently retreat, sir?" Erica asked acidly. Ray looked at me for a moment. "We are to protect Lady Nicola and her heirs," he explained, for what sounded like the 100th time. Frequently, that involves getting our charge off the field and out of enemy sights, and then following her. We are no good to the Tuolithea if we die for our pride." "Yes, sir," Erica answered sullenly. Her grin was gone, and her gaze was still down when Ray drew the knife from his side. Erica reacted before the blade had even fully left the sheath, and soon the two were in a flurry of attack and riposte that made my head spin in an attempt to follow. Ray was being cautious, testing his new charge, but I could tell he was using more effort to defend himself than he usually had to with novices. To end the fight, he got inside her guard and pressed the blade against her throat. Erica's blade was useless, trapped against her side. She, however, did not admit defeat. She passed the blade behind her back, transferring it to her left hand, and instantly it was against Ray's chest, the blade pressing just over his solar plexus. "You're dead, Erica," Ray said. "I'm not alone," she responded easily, slightly breathless, skin flushed with adrenaline. Ray nodded, acknowledging the point. "You have some good moves," he admitted. "Care to try it again?" This time he did not rebuke her grin. Not waiting to recover, Erica returned her blade to her dominant hand and began the fight anew. Ray did not check his ability in order to test hers, but while Erica did not have a chance to attack, she defended herself well. As evening progressed, I made my way to the second-level court. The market was peppered with gossips. The court was filled with practiced scholars and speakers. Rhetoric replaced simple stories. Ballads replaced the weepy tales. The Serpients' recent attempts at peace had already become legend, and the argument about what they really wanted was still going on. The idea that they had been honest was never considered. After supper, the younger members of the court retired. Had I not been heir to the Tuolithea, I would have probably been escorted out with the others. As it was, if I sat quietly, I could hear the stories that the minstrels and scholars considered too indiscreet to share when the students were still in the room. Ray usually came to court at about this time, mostly to call attention to me and hush the conversation when he deemed it inappropriate for his charge's ears. But tonight he was late. He sent another crow from his flight, but that young man had obviously not spent much time at court, and was easily caught in the web of words all these speakers wove. As I sat silently on the edge of the court, not in my place at the center table, people forgot I was present. Soon the scene in the Mystari lands was being discussed. How Zane had kissed me. Scandalous! In full view of two of the royal flight. Shocking! And neither one had made a move to stop him until he was already gone. Though speculation about his motives and why the royal flight had reacted so slowly was a bit strong, the details were essentially correct. Listening made me wonder how many of the other stories were true. Charday. I jumped at the voice behind my left shoulder, as did the guard Ray had sent to accompany me. Ray dismissed the young guard with a displeased scowl, then simply said to me, "Considering how early you rise in the morning, I would be remiss if I did not point out to you how late it is getting." In other words, he could not order me from the court. He had no authority to do that, but he had no intention of letting me stay to listen either. Ray escorted me to my floor. Once, this level had housed all of my family. The Tuolithea, her pair bond, and her sister, and my own sister and brother in addition to me. Now the empty rooms hung heavy with silence. I bid Ray good night, then, as I had done every evening since our visit to Mystari lands, I listened to Zane's words over and over in my mind. Could he have been honest? I could not help fearing him for being the Diente, for the flames in his eyes and the fangs that were hidden but never gone from my mind, and yet I really wanted peace. I slipped out of the slacks and blouse I had worn to court and into my favorite cotton nightgown. The pale rose color always made me feel as if I was curled up in a sunrise. Small comfort. I needed it. Chapter 7. Good evening to anyone who's just joined us. Dreams slid into my mind so slowly I had no sense of falling asleep. Nightmare chased nightmare until finally I was 10 years old, on my knees in the crimson field with two of the royal flight physically restraining me so I would not run to my sister's side. They tried to be gentle, but I fought tooth and nail to get away. ignoring the chaos of battle surrounding us. I was dreaming, I realized. My sister had died 9 years ago. Still, the smell of blood was so strong. I tried to wake up, but only succeeded in throwing myself into another lucid nightmare. I felt a serpent's blade slice into my shoulder, saw an 11-year-old Andreas, armed only with the bloody dagger he had taken from his father's still warm body, throw himself at the enemy to protect my 8-year-old self. I screamed as I saw the serpent start to uncoil to retaliate. I knew Ray would carry the scars from the serpent's fangs in his skin for the rest of his life, and I could not stop myself from trying to change history. This time, instead of being knocked out, I was struck solidly in the gut by an enemy blade, knocked down with a choked cry of pain. Vasily caught my hand, and though his expression was usually cool and remote, distanced as the hardest warriors always got eventually, he let me see past the reserve to glimpse the affection and concern in his nearly black eyes. I was 15, he was 17. Vasily was not the warmest companion, but as he helped me to stand, not berating me for my foolishness in trying to find Ray's younger sister, even though we had both known from the start it was too late to help her, I loved him. I knew I was dreaming, but it was so good to see him again. I had missed him so much. And then he was twisting away, his hand going for his weapon, as he pushed me behind him so he took the knife that had been thrown at me. Gregory Kobriana, clenching his teeth and looking away as he died, slowly. Ray, comforting as he could. I stood up as I had not done in real life and walked away. The dream phantom called after me, pleaded with me to stay, but I could not stand that again. And then it was Zane Kobriana before me, twin garnets pinning me in place as he said, "Please don't scream." Would I never wake up? I could never have done so in real life, but in the dream I wrenched my gaze from his and shoved him away. "What do you want?" I demanded. "I should think you know that," Zane answered simply. This was absurd. I wondered bitterly when this scene would turn into pain and violence like the others had. My nightmares had visited paths like this for years, one crystal-clear dream giving way to another until the morning, but until now they had always fallen apart the instant Zane Kobriana appeared. Now that I had seen him, spoken to him, my mind had more ammunition for nocturnal torments. Zane watched me, his expression wary. "You don't seem dangerous enough to warrant my mother dragging me out of the Mistari camps in the middle of the night," I commented to the spectre. The real Zane Kobriana terrified me, but this one was not overly intimidating. If anything, he reminded me of Vasily. He projected a mask that was numb to pain, but beneath it he was as fragile and tired of war as only a warrior could be. "I don't," Zane purred, a glint of amusement now showing in his red eyes. I began to pace. If I screamed and kept screaming, would I scream aloud? Would Ray come in and wake me? Or would the dream slow like molasses, as nightmares did, until it seemed I could do nothing but choke on the silence? "Danica, are you all right?" Zane asked, standing now, too, the skin between his eyebrows tensing with the hint of a frown. "Is there some reason I should be?" I nearly shouted in return. Zane winced, his gaze flickering to the nearby doorway. "I just want to sleep. I don't want to dream, because all I see then are the people I have lost. I don't want to smell the stench of death and decay and rotten blood. I don't want to hear the wet sputter of someone trying to breathe past pain. I don't want to see dying children whenever I close my eyes. But I am nearly to Aletheia," I said more quietly, "and once I am, that will be my entire life. War, death, and I don't know how to stop it." For a brief moment the arrogance was gone from Zane's expression, and he regarded me with what almost looked like respect. "If I knew how to grant that wish," he finally answered, voice soft, "I would have done so already. Before this damn war had taken so many from me too. Friends, lovers, family. I would have saved them all if I knew how. But if we both want peace, I can't believe that it is impossible to manage." I caught him sizing me up, his gaze flickering down my form and up again. "Perhaps there is more to you than I see here, Danica," Zane mused aloud, more than the stoic avian poise and emotionless reserve. He reached up and ran his fingers through my hair, which brought him alarmingly close. His wrapping an arm around my waist brought me even closer. And then he kissed me, this time not hesitant in the face of my recoil or hurried to avoid a knife from the royal flight. The sensation of his lips lingering over mine was startling. The light pressure of his body as he held me against himself was unexpected. He broke the kiss at the same time he pressed something into my hand. "Tomorrow afternoon, Danica. I'll make sure the guards on the door are loyal and will let you in safely," Zane said, his voice intense despite the fact that my mind was barely following it. I could feel myself sliding into the next dream segment, and I shrank from it, knowing the next scene would probably be a lot bloodier than this one. "We can't meet here in the open. Your guards will kill me if they catch me, but I have enough control in the palace that we can make plans there, if you'll come." I nodded, closing my hand on whatever he had given me. He brushed the back of his hand gently across my cheek and then crossed the room to my balcony doors. I had a vague picture of him spreading wing and flying away. Then I sat down to look at what Zane had pressed into my hand. Before my fingers had finished uncurling, the scene changed, and I was in the court, listening as Vasily debated some point I hardly understood, but was willing to listen to simply for the chance to hear his smooth voice. Chapter 8. I did not attend market the next day. I was so exhausted I probably would have fallen out of my seat. By midday, however, I had been summoned from my room. I followed the messenger up to my mother's personal balcony, the open-top floor of the Hawk's Keep. There was a gentle breeze today, and my mother looked like a romantic portrait, noble and sad but beautiful. She was dressed in raw silk, nearly white, with golden threads woven into the material around her throat, wrists, and the hem of her pants. The topic she wished to discuss was far from romance. "Chardet," she greeted me, dismissing the sparrow with a delicate nod. "I have a meeting this afternoon with the flight leaders. This is the last assembly before your coronation, and I thought it best that you joined me." I did not have a chance to do anything but nod before my mother added, "Come, they wait." Though I was capable of putting faces to names and matching those names with the flights they commanded, I knew very few of the flight leaders personally. Most of them reported to Ray, who then spoke to my mother or me if there was a problem. Avian flights were designed to work autonomously. I don't know why I struggle with that word so much. Each having its own specialties and tactics. Rarely did all the leaders meet unless the Tuuli Thea called them to, and since the decision for me to inherit early had only been made recently, I had never joined my mother for these councils. We descended to the second floor, where the courtiers had been cleared to make way for the soldiers. At a center table sat avian men and women from all levels of society, all of whom stood upon our entrance. Beside the flight commanders, I saw weaponsmiths and a few merchants who dealt in trade and not discussed in the marketplace. Around that table I saw eyes that reflected horrors of every scope. Haunted expressions met my gaze as I was introduced in turn to each defender and necessary killer. The only commander I felt at all comfortable with, Andreos, was the only one missing. The commander of the royal flight would converse with his queen alone. In the meantime, his flight was surrounding the keep. "Please sit," my mother said. The simple words began a conference I had no wish to be at. Karashan spoke first. "Milady, we have taken advantage of these last week's lull to train soldiers to replace those lost fighting the Cobra's people. We have also recently received a new shipment of amhaj from Anmik." The concoction of which Karashan spoke, more commonly called avian poison, was a falcon creation that my people had never been able to reproduce. Aside from occasional fatigue, it had almost no effect on my kind. However, a blade coated in it would cause almost instant death to a serpent, even if the wound was minor, an advantage we needed against an enemy who could blend effortlessly into the shadows, and who was both faster and stronger on land than our soldiers. Many times the Tuuli Thea had petitioned the falcons for more than poison, as they were rumored to possess magic, in addition to controlling the most deadly soldiers ever to live. The price for that aid, however, was surrendering our freedom to the falcons and accepting subjugation in exchange for victory. Like every queen before her, my mother had refused the soldiers. However, like every queen before her, she had accepted the poison. It was the only way we had survived this long. Karashan continued, I believe the Serpient are feeling panicked, milady. The only incidents that have occurred since Gregory Kopriana's death have been easily put down. She paused, looking about the table, where others were nodding agreement. We need to take advantage of this time, milady. I assume you have a recommendation, my mother said, when it seemed Karashan was hesitant to continue. There is obviously serious disorder among the Serpient. I suspect that your early return from Mistari land may have interfered with their plans. Before they reorganize, I would recommend a direct attack. We won't— No! My voice cut through Karashan's. Suddenly all eyes at the table were on me, including my mother's, which were full of disapproval at my interruption. I continued anyway. Doesn't anyone have even the slightest hope that the reason the Serpient have not attacked is because they honestly want peace? I saw the answer to that question before I had even finished asking it. The other flight leaders agreed with Karashan. I saw fear in some of their eyes, but more than that I saw jaded surrender. Peace was a myth to these people. They couldn't think of any other existence but war. There was no way to change that here, and yet I wasn't willing to let them destroy everything either. Trying to appeal to their more rational side, I pointed out, we have tried direct attacks before. They only bring slaughter. If we attack the Serpient in their own land, we might strike a blow, but it will be at an incredible cost. Knowing it was a painful subject for many, I reminded them. It took half of the ravens, a dozen of the royal flight, and 18 others to kill Gregory Kopriana. And in the meantime, Xavier Chardet, my brother, was killed. More than one of the commanders looked away as I spoke those words. I knew then from what flights those final 18 had come. That was on our own land. When the bodies were counted, we had 2 soldiers down for every one of theirs, including many of our best fighters and our prince. And you are willing to take the battle to Serpient land? Willing to lose a dozen soldiers to the archers on the palace roof before you even reach the ground? And then, what do you plan? To chase the royal family through their palace? I sighed, shaking my head. It's suicide, and we don't have a hope of doing enough damage to end this war. Before anyone could argue, I added, it's suicide even if they are as disorganized as Karashan believes they are. If you can't believe that the Serpient want peace, then they obviously have a plan. Attacking their heart would be walking right into it. As soon as our forces were destroyed, they would take the keep apart. Silence followed my words, a silence that was heavy with the weight of defeat. I didn't want to surrender. We would fight to the last sparrow before we would give up, but neither could I allow them to begin a battle that would destroy us and any last hope for peace. Chardet, do you have another plan? My mother asked. Another plan? I wish I could have stayed in the Mistari lands to negotiate, no matter how frightening their first suggestion had been, but my kind was not trusting enough to allow another meeting. The only way I could speak to the serpents again would be without the knowledge of my people. Alone, I would be shot down long before I could even reach the palace to request an audience. Stalling for time, I threw my only thoughts out. Something less direct, something they wouldn't predict. What wouldn't they predict? We'd been warring for thousands of years, fighting like 2 dancers who know each other's moves without thinking. If we want to attack them on their land, we need to know what we are attacking. But we've never even managed to get a soldier inside the palace. No one who returned, anyway. We need to do something, Karashan declared, soon. I would accept losing every life under my command as well as my own if we could deal a wound that wouldn't heal. We've always been conservative in the past, and we've always ended up exactly where we started. Isn't it time to risk a little more? There were murmurs of agreement around the table. In some generations in the past, the Tuuli Thea had been ruled by this group. If I didn't make a decision, the chance would be taken from me, but I was not ready to set a date for the slaughter. I am accepting the crown in 3 days, I stated. My voice was strong, and it hushed the mumbling. Give me that time to think. In the meantime, make your plans for the attack. It will take you at least that long to organize the kind of offensive you are talking about. If by the morning after the coronation no one has come up with a better plan, I will give you the word to go. I glanced at my mother for her reaction. For the next few days she was still queen. I saw hesitation on her face and silently prayed that she would abide by my decision. Finally, Nicola Chardet nodded. 3 days, when your Tuuli Thea gives the word. She did not mention considering other possibilities, but neither did she override my words with a command to attack now. Karashan, the royal flight is needed here, so you will lead the attack. After my daughter's coronation, you will present the plans to your new Tuuli Thea for her approval. Yes, milady. Dismissed, everyone, she said briskly, when no objections were raised. Unless another method is decided upon, we will reconvene the morning after the coronation. I watched the flight leaders leave, feeling shaken. After the 3 days were over, this would be my life. The battle that Karashan was talking about would be madness, but I saw no way to prevent it, unless I could think of an equally decisive way to end this war. When we were again alone together, my mother said, You spoke wisely today, Danica. Wise words won't save people's lives if I cannot think of another plan, and I have no other plan, I answered. The Tuuli Thea looked at me sadly for a moment. I don't mean to hurry you, Danica, she said gently, her voice holding a rare note of affection. But I honestly feel you are ready to take the throne, while I am long past my prime. It is a queen's faith that keeps her people alive, but mine is running out. You are young yet, I argued, upset by the note of finality in her tone. Perhaps, but some days I feel so washed away. You still have dreams, Danica. I have faith in you and what you can do. So does Karashan, or she would not have let you stall her plans today. She has been planning this offensive since Irene Kobriana first entered our courtyard. I shuddered at the thought that different words might have sent us all to battle today. My mother changed the subject to lighter things. It occurred to me while you were speaking that when you accept the position of Tuuli Thea, you might also announce your choice for Alastair. It would help the morale of your people, my mother explained. I nodded, though with reluctance. This was her way of assuring herself and the rest of our people that the idea proposed by the Mistari queen was preposterous. I will consider it, I allowed. Have you given any thought to whom you will choose? The question was just a formality, since we both knew the answer was Andreos. His lineage was almost as pure as my own, and as leader of the royal flight, his loyalty was unquestioned. I will be able to give my decision after the ceremony, I answered, thinking how very short the next 3 days were likely to be. When she did not speak for a moment, I inquired, Is there anything else you would like to discuss? She shook her head. I wish I could have given you peace, she said with a tired smile. Fly with grace, nestling. It had been so long since my mother had spoken to me with anything but detached civility, a queen to her subject, that hearing her speak so fondly made my throat constrict, even though the words were a dismissal. And you, mother. After the words I did not return to my room, but instead sequestered myself inside the library on the 3rd floor. I could not think of a way to reach the Kobriana peacefully. If I could not think of a way to reach the Kobriana peacefully, then perhaps these books of tactics and descriptions of past battles would at least help me think of something less mad than Karashan's plans. Instead, I found a dusty copy of an ancient text written in the smooth, flowing symbols of the old language. Supposedly, the original text had been written by the brother of Alasdair, who had been the first queen of my kind. No one could read the old language any more, but when I absently flipped the pages, I found a few paragraphs that had writing above them, a translation done by a raven named Valine. She had been a highly regarded scholar until her quest for knowledge had led her to the Serpient. She had been exiled from the courts long ago, but Apparently she had translated some of the first of this text. My sister is a beautiful queen. She has seen only 15 summers of life, but she has taken us from famine to abundance and transformed us from a poor village of beggars to an empire to rival the Falcons. They call her the Golden One. A bit later, another piece was translated. Against my counsel, Alice Dare has allowed the serpents into the city. Their reputation is not kind, and I do not like their presence inside our walls. They say they are only here to trade. My sister insists they are as human as we are, and should be trusted as we trust our own. A few lines were translated on each of the next few pages, and then came the words I did not want to read. In the back. She showed them only kindness. She treated them only warmly. They have nothing to gain. Trust a snake to attack just because a trusting back is turned. I shuddered, putting the journal aside. Was I following in my ancestors' footsteps, giving trust to a cobra despite every warning? Was I making the same mistakes, to ultimately end with the same fate? How long is chapter 9? Chapter 9 is very long. Yeah, chapter 9 is very long. Okay. So that brings us to chapter 9 for the evening. Yeah, this is about to get good. This is about to get really good. All right. So that concludes our reading for this evening. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So if you happen to either join this reading late, or if you just happen to want to hear it again, once I finish processing it, I will actually be uploading it to my YouTube page. Oh, Miss Deborah, you're welcome. My pleasure. I will be uploading this reading to my YouTube page. I have last week's reading already up, so if you guys missed that, please feel free to hop onto my YouTube page. Like and subscribe if you want to, in case you haven't already. And so that will get you caught up with this reading. And then if you want, you can go back and re-listen to this evening's reading once I get it all processed. So I hope you guys have a fantastic evening, and I will see you guys again on Monday. Same time, 8 to 9 o'clock-ish. So take care of yourselves, stay hydrated, stay safe, and I hope you guys have a fantastic evening, and I will see you next week. Bye!